Okay, and let's get going. So hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Erica Yeager, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief External Affairs Officer for the North Texas Food Bank and working with many of you. So thank you for spending your lunch hour with us as we present this next episode of Behind the Scenes. So these short informational sessions were designed to give some of our most valued partners and supporters a sneak peek into some of our work, timely and relevant work. So we thank you for your interest and investment in our mission, especially at a time when we're seeing increased demand and resource constraints. We know that the need for food assistance is great in our community, and it's growing along with the economic uncertainty that we're all facing as families, businesses, and communities. And we believe, you've heard us share before, that a nourished community is a thriving community. So we remain committed to ensuring that all of our neighbors have access to the food that they need. So I'm pleased to introduce you today to Maurice Wilson II, who joined the food bank team this summer as our Chief Operating Officer. So Maurice has a strong logistics background that includes military service and leadership positions at both Walmart and Wayfair. So we're excited for you to get to know him better today as he discusses the impact of inflation on our work. But first, I want to give you a quick peek into his story.
If I think about my own story, hunger was at the center. My mother struggled, but the whole family struggles. I can remember Christmases not receiving gifts. I can remember situations where I had to choose to not do things so that my younger siblings could have access to things. The biggest struggle was the stigma attached to being hungry or being less than or having opportunities with paying rent or making ends meet. There was a shame that was associated with it, which made it harder to ask for help. There was a negative connotation, which made it more difficult for people to have resources, because we all thought, at least that was the common thinking at that time, that they weren't trying to save themselves, and that nothing could be further from the reality. My mother worked 2 and 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. As a child, I never, ever conceded to the fact that I would be hungry as an adult. And I committed to myself and to my family that that would not be our story. I'm Maurice Wilson, and I'm the COO of the North Texas Food Bank. Every place that I've been, whether it was the military, whether it was Walmart, Wayfair, I was always doing those things that were unconventional, but that were connecting to where people were and helping them get to better spaces and better places. My role as a COO is to get it done. No matter what our neighbors need, we have to build a supply chain that's able to support that. I am the face of hunger, and I will always be that. I will always be that child. Those memories will never leave. It's deep for me. It's not just my face that I see all the faces of those who were around me that as a child I could not help. And so I've been given the opportunity to come back to something so fundamental for me and to actually impact it. And I couldn't be more excited.
So 2 things to note as we get started. Please submit questions as we go through the chat feature. And if you're an agency leader joining us today, know that Maurice is going to be on your next agency connection call. So if we don't get to all the questions today, you'll have another opportunity. One of my favorite things about working with Maurice is he ends every conversation with the words, "Let's go." So Maurice, let's go. I'm turning it over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And, just once again, thanks. There's Can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. Well, again, good afternoon. My name is Maurice Wilson II, and so I serve as the COO of the North Texas Food Bank. I'll talk a little bit about my background and kind of what drew me to the North Texas Food Bank. So started in the military, then went into logistics for Walmart, where I spent about 15 years, and then about 2 years at Wayfair. And one of the things that resonated for me was the need to get back to what was more fundamental to my story. I'm glad you guys got to see that clip, because it really it answers the first question for you, I think. If you're asking what drew me to the North Texas Food Bank, it was the mission, It's in alignment with service, which is really at the core of who I am. It was the people. We have amazing folks on this staff. Everyone here is just really committed to doing exceptional things. And then it was the partners, you know, what they do and who you guys are. It's just amazing. And so whether you're a partner in funding, whether you're a partner in service, it just was the right decision for me to come to the North Texas Food Bank. So excited to be here and look forward to meeting all of you along the way. Now I want to talk a little bit about where we are today. We just want to give an update on what communities are seeing and what's happening in the North Texas Food Bank area. And so if you're looking at that slide, it is the perfect storm. Rising inflation, supply chain issues, declining federal aid amidst heightened demand has created a perfect storm of events that is both ratcheting up our demand for food while also diminishing supply. A post-COVID pullback of federal aid in all its forms, from TFAP to direct aid, means the current situation is more alarming for many than it is even during the height of the pandemic. In terms of our community, at the beginning of 2022, the nation was just beginning to rebound from the pandemic. Things were beginning to look a little bit more normal, a lot better than they had in the previous years. But in the background, government aid for programs designed to help during the pandemic were beginning to sunset. Tax credits, extra SNAP payments, free school meals for all, for example, had either gone away or were about to. And so when you think about those rising costs, you know, as you go into it, in March, the nation suddenly was facing a 40-year high inflation rate of 8.5%, causing our neighbors to make impossible choices. Neighbors are spending on average $325 more each month for food than they did this time last year. The rising cost of food is only a small part of the problem for many neighbors. The inflation rates for rent and transportation have been even higher, and that eats up more and more of what households need to survive. And it accounts for more than 40% of the total income for a lot of American households. So the reality of food insecurity really isn't about food. It's about income, where their income does not cover the needs. With inflation related to food, gas, housing costs, our neighbors in every zip code, many of whom were struggling before the pandemic, are facing increasingly difficult choices every day, deciding whether to purchase groceries or pay for other necessities such as gas, medicine, or utilities. That's a decision that no one should have to make. In terms of our demand since March, before the pandemic, the North Texas Food Bank provided access to an average of 7.3 million meals a month through distribution and SNAP application assistance. During the pandemic and through February of 2022, we provided access to an average of 10.5 million meals a month. On average, we have provided access to 12.3 million meals a month since March. So when you think about that level of growth in such a small amount of time with inflation on top of it, again, 7.3 to 10.5 to now 12.3 million meals a month. Since March of this year, we've seen a 17% increase in the number of meals the North Texas Food Bank has provided access to, both SNAP and distributed food. So that 12.3, we're still seeing an increase of up to 17% on top of that. And the reality is no one in North Texas should be hungry. I know that I was surprised to learn that nearly 700,000 North Texans are unsure where their next meal is coming from. Tragically, this includes more than 250,000 children, or 1 in every 5 in our region, giving the North Texas Food Bank service area the 4th highest level of food insecurity in the country. I know what that looks like, and I know what that feels like to be a child, and that's unacceptable. With record inflation, our neighbors are struggling to meet their basic family needs. The needs and demands are higher today than even at the height of the pandemic. So we're facing a lot. And then when we talk about what is the impact to the North Texas Food Bank and our feeding network, Well, meal demand is up, food supply is down, and donations are starting to soften. The North Texas Food Bank has seen a 69% increase in meals delivered to the North Texans before the pandemic, but the North Texas Food Bank is not immune to the inflationary pressures. While we are seeing longer lines at distributions, we're facing soaring costs and other challenges in procuring food due to supply chain issues. So again, we're seeing delayed shipments, we're seeing less production, less output as other companies are. And so that fight is even more for us. The supply of food in our warehouses is lower than it's been in a while. And it's due in part to reductions in government support. And on top of that, the supply chain issue. And as you see those shelves, that's the worst thing to see. And I know, how that feels in each one of these opportunities. When you see it, it means a need that goes unfulfilled. And it's something that we work on every day. And that's our USDA room. So this is where the majority of this government aid would come in. The government aid that food banks saw during the pandemic is down. We estimate the amount of TFAP food nationwide will drop by 340% by the end of 2022, compared to the peak at 2020. That means that the North Texas Food Bank has less food provided by the government and is having to subsidize that by spending a much larger percentage of our budget to acquire enough food to meet the elevated demand. Now, the good news is that the USDA recently announced that it is making $500 million in additional funding available to existing local food purchase assistance programs. This supports local food purchases for emergency food systems. However, food banks will not be able to place orders for food until the beginning of 2023, when their cycle begins again. This means we're heading into a busy holiday season in need of food. In addition to less government supplied food, supply chain issues are causing significant delays in food shipments that the North Texas Food Bank has had to purchase, which means our feeding partners have fewer food items to choose from for their food pantries. Now, we're hoping these shipments will be arriving within the next few weeks, but we're currently working on what we can do to align better practices to get more freight in faster. So again, as we look at that, the basic premise, meal demand up, food supply down, donations softening, the North Texas Food Bank is responding the best we can by pursuing a number of strategies, and I want to share some of those with you. So we're calling upon government agencies for help, building up pathways for increased produce distribution, expanding relationships with grocer donors, and ramping up fundraising efforts. I would tell you that year to date, we are up 5 million in terms of our donated pounds. So our teams are sourcing more food and getting that food out to these communities. North Texas Food Bank now has more transportation bandwidth to pick up donations from area groceries compared when it was scrambling to get emergency food out to agencies during COVID. Over the last year, the North Texas Food Bank has increased its number of retail donors by 21% to 407 relationships, expanding its percentage of donated food to 59%, up from 42%. North Texas Food Bank's cost to serve from logistics and transportation is down 5% as we continue to steward donor dollars. So we want to operate under the lowest cost that we can and transfer all those savings into the food that we need to purchase. And the news is that we are doing that currently. North Texas Food Bank is operating on a deficit budget to meet the need. We are currently working from a budget of 60 million, but are only projecting 41 million in public support. We had planned for that, but that is not sustainable. So that additional from 41 to 60, we're making that up out of the pocketbook. And we know that's not sustainable. But no matter the need, the North Texas Food Bank is committed to working with our feeding network to provide the right food to the right place at the right time. That requires us to secure the needed food, funds, and volunteers to serve our neighbors. The current environment is driving our need to evaluate and improve how we procure and distribute food, which includes evaluating our current fleet of trucks, our processes and procedures, and systems for managing food intake and distribution, and working closely with our feeding network to make sure that we are providing nutritious and culturally relevant food selections to our neighbors. Inflation has impacted our donors as well. Although the community has been very generous and supportive of their neighbors in need, we are seeing a softening in giving. However, the community continues to support the North Texas Food Bank through volunteering, and volunteers are the lifeblood of the organization. As we look at our strategic plan, the North Texas Food Bank has a solid strategy for providing food for today and hope for tomorrow, and is committed to providing the food and resources needed to help close the hunger gap in North Texas. We could not do that without the support of our community in terms of funds, food, volunteers, and advocacy. And we're thankful for the partnerships that we have in addressing such a complex issue. And now I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Maurice. I will encourage everyone to drop questions in chat. We had several pre-submitted. I'm going to start with a little bit of a softball one, Maurice. You know, we often say that hunger is a complex issue, and food bank operations can be equally as complex as we work to get the right food to the right place at the right time. Tell me, in your first 4 months here, what has surprised you most about food bank operations or the issue of hunger?
Well, in terms of the food bank in general, it's one of the most complex supply chains that I've ever had the opportunity to serve in. And I don't know if that, I don't know if I thought that coming in. When you think about food rescue, purchasing food from various vendors, but then also the complexities around USDA, all the different regulations that must be met in terms of, you know, where you get the food and then where it's going, making those connections, the agency connect. It is a complex, stratified system, and you know, we want to make it even better. But it definitely was a surprise for me just to understand how complex this supply chain is and how it operates.
And how did your experience at either Wayfair or Walmart logistics role prepare you for where you are today?
Sure. I think Walmart was probably the best example in terms of what really shaped me. Coming out of the military, we had a can-do attitude, and I believe that that was the foundation. But then going into Walmart, we had a service mentality, and so, you know, having a servant's heart always means that, you know, you are thinking for the customer, and that customer for us is the agencies, but also for our neighbors. And so really coming into this position and looking at the different departments that are under my charge and looking at them from a customer lens, saying what is best for the customer? What is going to be best for the neighbor? How do we enable our agencies better? I think it's been, you know, it's been a welcome line of questioning for a lot of the teams, but it's also driven some different thoughts, some collaborative differences in terms of how we go to market day to day, and also some long-term changes in our planning when we think about service being the vital component for our agencies and our neighbors.
And speaking of which, we have a question about servicing those agencies and our purchasing strategy. So what types of food are we purchasing right now to make sure that agencies have food on their shelves so they can best serve their communities?
Sure. So we start with the pantry staple list. You know, that is our, that's the refrigerator. How I look at it is, you know, I talk with the team and I try to make all these things relative, but, you know, we want families to go to the cabinet and the refrigerator and be able to make a meal. That's really our commitment. So that pantry staple is that. It's the refrigerator and the cabinet for the customers we serve. So that's what we're going after. Unfortunately, variety can, it can be minimized by what's out there. So we are at the, we're at the request of what's available in the market. So there are certain times where we may go out looking for variety, but we have to choose quality. We have to choose, you know, the pounds that are right for the pantry list. And then, you know, we also want to make sure that those meals are nutritious. So sometimes that variety lingers behind just based on what's out there. But I would tell you, the team is razor sharp on that. And anytime we have something in the market, we go grab it. There was just a buy on apples and it was a scramble. I got a text on Saturday. Hey, there's something available. Give me the go ahead to go get it. And we absolutely got it and got that out to our service area. So.
I was just down in the warehouse yesterday and I saw lots of produce, including those apples and cabbages and strawberries. So I know there's lots of good, fresh, nutritious produce for the agencies to order. So can you talk a little bit about the government support? We got a question about historically, how much of the food that we distribute is provided by the government and what are the other sources of food? So are you able to touch on that?
Sure. So last year, 29% of the food we distributed was provided by government hunger relief programs. 59% was donated. And so we purchased the rest, which is about 12%. But we anticipate that government number to fall dramatically. We expect that to be in the 10% this year. So that other 20% is really what we're going out to purchase. And it could be even more just based on how the need is coming in. So we're really looking at what is the worst case scenario in terms of purchasing for this year, just based on the extreme drop off. I think the percentage is somewhere around 300% in terms of the total amount of hunger relief drop off year over year. And again, we don't know what this new allocation is going to be in the next year, but that's the projection from the drop off year to date.
Yes, and know that the North Texas Food Bank has a strong advocacy team. So we're doing everything we can leading up to this next legislative season to make sure that funding is available to access some additional food product as well. Let's see, we have some other questions coming in. This is interesting to me, Maurice. Can you talk a little bit? You were very open and authentic and transparent about your lived experience. And sometimes that's a difficult thing to talk about. We want to lead with empathy and we want to listen and understand the concerns of those that we're serving that experience food insecurity. So how can you be vulnerable in that moment? And what did that feel like for you to share a little bit about your lived experience?
Well, it's a part of me. It's as much as I am the man that I am today, I'm still that child. And I let that be okay. I think it's one of the ways that has really helped me from a leadership perspective is that I never lose touch. I always used to say it's an umbilical cord. I want to remain tied to those things that are, that shape me, that help me align on values. And so that's one of them. I understand that hard choices are always necessary, but I also understand that there's people on the other end of those choices. And I never for a moment have forgotten that. And so that stays with me in every place that I've been, in every leadership opportunity that I've taken, is I understand that every decision has ground impact for someone. And I always want to take that into account. I want someone to operate, with that type of a mindset, to be more than fair with how we are trying to help. So it's a perspective that I keep. It doesn't blind me. I'm not so driven by it that it aligns me to poor decisions or decisions that, don't support the overarching mission. But it does give me a space to speak from that's authentic and sometimes drives different conversation and maybe some changes in the way in which we do some of the things that we do to honor those that we serve.
Thank you for that perspective. I have one more question that I encourage you guys to submit your questions via chat, but it's scary to see those empty shelves. How long do you think the food bank will be able to provide this level of support with a food deficit or product availability issues, some supply chain issues. We're not in crisis mode for sure, but we continue to purchase food, and we know that that's not sustainable. So how long do you believe we'll be able to serve at this level?
Well, really the goal for me is to align the team to two things. I want to ensure that we are operating at the lowest possible cost so that if there's an opportunity, we can use those savings if they have to be used for additional purchasing, because we still have to be responsible to, steward the dollars. We have to be responsible to the board in terms of the budget that we committed to. And I am aligned that way, but I want to make sure that there's enough trade-offs on the table so that we continue to serve. The issue right now is really understanding where the need is. We don't know exactly where the need is driving, and there's a few things that are keeping us from having a really good eye on that. Some of it has been product availability, and then there's some things that are happening in the agencies that are different for them, and then they're responding, and then we respond correspondingly. Now we're really trying to kind of step back and say, hey, what is the total impact of this new need, and now project that for the rest of the year. So the hope is that the government money comes in at some point, and we get back to some of those levels, which allows us to really restock. The reality is we'll be on the line of making sure that we're good stewards of the dollars that we committed and the budget that we committed to, while also providing for as much of the available product that we can source and keep in-house. That is really going to be the guiding principle for the remainder of the year this year. It is going to be year from that perspective. We're going to be challenged every week, every month, with exactly how many dollars we have. Are we spending them the right way? Are we getting those freight bills coming in? Are carriers bringing in those products? And then are they available so that our agencies can have them? It's a cycle we'll be tracking really hour by hour through the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. We've had a couple more questions come in. Would love your input on this. What's the solution to improving some of the statistics around hunger in Dallas in particular?
Wow. And this is recorded, so everyone understand that I'm a real person. So it's big. The solution is big. I believe that it's a connection, a much larger connection. This is Maurice Wilson speaking. So what I was doing when I was at Walmart, I was creating systems where new hourly employees could get rental assistance just based on the fact that they were employed with us, or we could give free rides to people, based on the fact that they were employed with us. What I find agencies doing on top of food is putting in those wraparound services. And I really think in order for us to move the needle, we'll move the needle regardless. But I think if corporations can come in contact and in unison with these agencies, and we provide more opportunity, better opportunities, while we subsidize the need, I believe that more folks can, finally get off that treadmill of poverty.
I think this is such a good illustration of our new Nourish North Texas strategy, where it's all about food for today and hope for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
How do we partner with those traditional and non-traditional partners alike to reduce those barriers to food security, whether it's providing access to education or healthcare or financial empowerment? So we like to say it takes everyone at the table to address the issue of hunger, whether it's Dallas or in the other 12 counties that we serve. So we had, one of our supporters is on the bridge as well. And she was asking, what do we do? What do we do as a community to address this? And it does feel like we're in somewhat of a crisis. How do we wrap our minds around the current challenge, but also think toward the future? And, she had suggested a potential focus group or think tank. And I think that's a great idea. It's going to take the community to solve this.
Absolutely. And there's folks doing great things everywhere. And that's the good news. I think figuring out how we get more woven, it's a concept I always talk about is I want to be woven. I want to be, embedded. I want to be woven with my partners. And I think we'll find some synergies and we'll make the impact. So.
Well, there are a number of other questions on what can we do to help. So let's flip on to the next slide and we can address that head on. We always like to end these sessions with being very explicit what you can do. We work hard to steward those dollars, so we encourage giving during this holiday season. We get about 40% of our revenue during the months of November and December. So if you have the resources to give, know that we can stretch those resources and still we're able to provide 3 meals for that $1. And we've got matching funds during the holiday season, thanks to Salmons and the Beaumont Foundation, which can serve as an extra push there. And listen, we know that inflation is impacting those that we serve and those that support us, and sometimes they're one and the same. So we recognize that people have fewer dollars to share this holiday season. So we're grateful for those resources that do come our way. We so encourage you to volunteer. We are seeing more and more of a need on our production floor. We're sorting, we're packing, we're gleaning. So if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and join us in that work, or join us at any of the agencies in our feeding network, you know that they would appreciate the muscle as well. And then we mentioned we're entering the 88th legislative season here in Texas. So we might be calling upon you to lend your voice to help us advocate for a policy that will make access to food more available for those that we serve. So those are 3 easy ways. We invite you to stay in touch with your food bank rep, whether it's on the sourcing team, the CPR team, the philanthropy team. We are anxious to have those conversations to see where you would like to connect. But in the absence of any additional questions, I want to thank you all again for sharing some time with us today. I want to thank Maurice, not only for saying yes to the food bank, but sharing his expertise and his perspective and his logistics know-how with us. We are better together, and certainly better with him on board with us. So let's go, Maurice. This recording will be available. We will send it out afterwards. And with that, I'm going to say, have a great afternoon. We appreciate you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.